Okay, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're listening to in the world. I am Althea Walters, and I am the host for today's show. Welcome to the Focused and Fulfilled podcast. And this is the show where we dive into real stories, powerful strategies, and life-changing stories and insights from leaders, achievers, and productivity pros. Today's episode is for anyone who has ever felt buried under pressure, caught in constant grind, or struggling to show up as their best self. Because we're diving into how to reset your mind and overcome overwhelm. And today, my guest is Dr. David Moore. He is a chiropractor, educator, and certified coherence instructor who specializes in helping high performers rewire their brains from stressed and scattered to present and powerful. So today, I just wanted to share with you. Dr. Moore is also here with us. So welcome, Dr. David Moore, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me and sharing this message with your community.
All right, great. So we're going to just dive in. I really just want to understand a little bit about you, a little bit about your background and why, specializing in rewiring brains. So tell us all about it. I'm excited to hear. And I know my audience is also excited to hear. Tell us all about that.
Great. Thank you so much. I know a lot of people out there in business, they're entrepreneurs and they're driving and they're drivers. I mean, they're trying to grow something. And I get that. I'm the same spirit, right? So for 27 years, I'm a chiropractor. But before I became a chiropractor, I became a chiropractor partially because I had a lot of injuries. When I was in high school, I had already fractured my neck, dislocated my shoulder, dislocated my hip, and I actually had a knee issue
Oh,
all on the
wow.
left side. And then I had a car accident just sophomore year of college on the left side. So my whole if I start turning this way during the conversation, like I'm cranked this way. So imagine practicing for 27 years, high volume, working with athletes. An adjuster, so I use my body, and I try to keep myself fit through the whole time so I can kind of keep it stable. I'm 54 years old. About 10 years ago, my body just couldn't keep up with it, right? So I just noticed that I was going to have to leave my practice. There was no way. I was in so much chronic pain and so much breakdown.
Right.
I was going to work hurt. I was going to work hurt, fixing people that were less hurt. They left happy. I left in pain. So if you could imagine the struggle and really the situation I was in, because I was Dr. Dave. I actually called myself like that was my identity. It wasn't like doctor. I was my like that's I never was a Mr. Dave. I was a kid and then I was a doctor. So my identity was wrapped up in my practice and what I did. And I had to make a decision and realize that the writing was on the wall that like I didn't know what I was going to do. So there was a lot of stress in my life. I was feeling the pain. I didn't know who I was going to be or what I was going to do. And I bumped into a friend who on a church parking lot on a Friday night, and he was a very successful stockbroker in Manhattan. We're in New Jersey. We're right across from Manhattan. So he went to work on 9/11, showed up for work late that day, and the planes had already hit the building. He's looking up at his office at Cantor Fitzgerald, and people are jumping. Okay. Now, understand, we grow up here. He worked with his friends, some from high school. So, like the PTSD, the stress, the anxiety, like it was a downward spiral for him in 2001, and alcoholism, drugs. And so now this is back 10 years ago. So, what's it, 2015? And he had recovered and all that. But he had asked me about breath work. And it's funny, I was listening because he was asking me for himself. But at the same time, I was like, man, I'm dealing with some stuff. So I
Yeah.
went home and I really just dove in deep into breath work at that moment. And I don't want to talk too long. Let's let that sit a second because maybe some people could identify with career change or on being so wrapped up in your career and your identity that maybe like and maybe have to walk away or who are you? And like, my goodness, it was like a crazy time for me. And I just wonder if people out there could relate to something like that.
Yeah. What an interesting story, right? What an interesting journey as well for you. And I like the fact that sometimes, we best connect with people who have been through our struggles, have been along the path, and so would have endured what we are going through even at this point in time. So when you talk about your accidents, when you talk about the PTSD, when you talk about all of these things, these are common areas that people struggle with. The anxieties because we're transitioning through life.
But many struggle quietly. I
Yes.
happen to talk about it on a podcast because I want people to identify to that, right?
Yeah.
And quite honestly, as a doctor, breathing and meditation and like there's it's kind of woo woo, right? Like yoga and all that stuff, and which I love woo woo by the way. But if I'm going to learn something and take it into practice, for me, it had to be I had to be able to measure it. I had to be able to reproduce it, or and I didn't know anybody doing that with breath work, right? But then
Yeah.
I actually discovered that you could objectively measure your autonomic nervous system using heart rate variability. There's techniques around that, and you can literally wire your brain. So I went from woo woo because I couldn't take woo woo into practice and train people, and
Right.
I couldn't reproduce it. So how could I, coach somebody to get somewhere? And the second thing was this, I'm a Christian, okay, so. I knew that there's a lot of weird stuff around meditation and religions and different stuff, and I didn't want to bring anything to anybody that would affect, it would be there'd be a contradiction in their culture, it would affect their, you know what I mean? So I wanted to make sure that I could. So I called my pastor, and my pastor said, "No, it's not that. It's if you can do breath work, and you can do it from an objective perspective, and you're doing it to lower blood pressure and decrease anxiety and get a physiological change, there's nothing to worry about." And so I kept it that perspective. I wanted to know what worked. I know breath work worked. I know all that stuff worked, meditation works, but what about it made it work? And how could we take what works, the objective aspect out of it, not the subjective as well, right? But take that objective aspect out of it and an ability to reproduce it so we can literally cause change, not in people's brains, but also in their body. And that's the thing that blew me away as a chiropractor, that your
Yeah.
physiology, right, is run by your psychology, meaning your feelings drive the engine,
Right.
which I think is crazy because most people could identify with the fact that if your back hurts, your stomach hurts, you're got the flu, you're probably not in a good mood, right? Like that's not your best day. But I'm talking about the opposite. I'm talking about you being in a psychological state
Hmm.
driving your physiology state. Like think about the fact that stress, anxiety, drives high blood pressure, cortisol hormones, they slows down your digestive tract. There's a physical reaction to stress, right? Which is interesting, but there's also a physical reaction to love and empathy and in higher states. It's the
Yeah.
same mechanism. So what we've been able to do is notice that that's happening, like your thoughts and feelings are driving your physiology, and then identify what thoughts and feelings drive a healthy physiology. Turns out it's the loving feelings, which is a good thing, right? So we're
Yeah.
literally training people to rewire their brains using breath work, which is an access point to the autonomic nervous system, heart rate variability, which we can measure the autonomic nervous system, and we bring them through a particular state of mind, which drives the engine towards health. And literally over time, we get to rewire people, see their brains rewire with that technology. But watch their lives change. Like I'm more interested, like I will tell you physiologically, I'd love to see the health change, but more importantly, when people can train themselves to be in that loving, happy state for periods of time, their lives change.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they don't even remember what that feels like. And to do it
Right.
intentionally, it's pretty cool.
Right. So, whoa, because I heard a lot of things, right? And I'm gonna try and backtrack a little bit, right? So you said that your physiology is run by your psychology, right? So what's going on in the brain? And a lot of us aren't really able to, sometimes we don't even recognize what is going on, right? So what are some of the signs that you are stressed? What are some of the signs that, hey, we need somebody to help us along this part? What are some of the signs?
Cool. So first of all, just to be clear, right? Thoughts are for the brain, right? Thoughts are in our mind, they're in our brain. That's not what's driving our physiology. It's when we attach a feeling or a meaning to the thought, we search our brain for the memory of what that is, and then we have a feeling, which is for the body. The memory it doesn't happen until the feeling happens. The feeling has a physiological signature, a particular heart rate, a particular breath pattern, a particular digestive thing, this particular hormone. Like there's a thing that relates to that feeling because it is a feeling. Like grandma's apple pie, if you think of it, when you really think of it and you remember it, the
Right.
memory is that you smell it. Your
Right,
digestive
right.
tract, your stomach goes, like, let's get ready. Like there's a physiological change, right? So great question that you just asked. Sorry for the long answer. I'm going to make them
No
shorter.
problem.
Apologize. But it's fun, right? So the idea is this. People don't even realize it. I call it the frog in boiling water. It's the CEO that's built the big business who's sitting there at the restaurant who can't figure out what to order. Like it's like the little decisions are always big decisions, right?
Yeah.
It's this state of hypervigilance because there's a part of the brain, the limbic system is what drives the feelings and emotions. And part of the limbic system is this amygdala, these little almond shaped things in your brain. And what they do is they're kind of like a smoke alarm. So when there's things to be alert, like they trigger beyond your reasoning. It bypasses your forebrain. So for example, like when you jump and you thought you saw something, that was your amygdala. It bypassed your forebrain because you need to do that sometimes. Unfortunately, that amygdala gets so hypersensitive because it's always on high alert that you're just
Right.
like freaking out all the time. And like
Yeah.
people
So
don't
we get
put two
anxious about so many different things.
anxious all the time, but and you're not making good decisions. You're not making good relationship decisions. You're not making good sales
Life
decisions. You're not running your
decisions.
no, you're running because you're running in survival mode,
Yeah.
right? And that's what fight and flight really is.
Yeah, but so many of us are just, that's just how we're living now. We're on survival mode. We're just trying to keep up with the pace of life. But in the same time, we are not doing so good. We're not managing well, right? So you spoke about rewiring the brain and you're doing it through breath work. So I just want to get this part clear first. Is it that what's the difference between rewiring your brain and it sounds deep versus me just taking a break and just pausing? What's the difference? And
Great
why it's
question.
so important to
Great
rewire?
question. I was just thinking about this today. Like these are things, I love these. So think of the word is called neuroplasticity. Your brain is constantly adapting to whatever stimulus you're giving it to. So when they say you can't teach an old dog no new tricks, that's
Mhm.
not true in the human brain. The human brain until you die is constantly responding to your environment. So what happens is as it's doing that, it's leveling up to higher and higher levels of things. But the problem is this. What got you successful? I always say this with health or success. What drove you? We had to be drivers. We had to learn to study our craft, study our business, whatever it's going to be, and be drivers. And the thing is this, there's nothing wrong with that. The
Yeah.
problem is you got results from it and it's become your personality. The inability to turn that off because you're afraid if you let your foot off the gas, you're going to lose, right? You're gonna not make the sale, or if you lose that instinct because it got you there. What got you there will not get you the rest of the way, is my point.
Hmm.
What got you
So
halfway
true.
here, okay? The driving focus and the constant vigilance and the 7 days a week burning the candle at both ends, which is admirable in this society. It's celebrated.
Yeah,
It's like
because that's the culture.
yeah, it's like the grit, it's the grind, right? But the thing,
It's
what
like your
happens is
mark of honor. Right.
but man, let me tell you something. If you're an athlete, you know this. And if you're watching basketball right now, and the Pacers, the Indiana Pacers, and if you don't watch basketball, then this is what they're doing, right? They have an extra gear in the last 3 minutes of their game that nobody knows it's coming, and it comes and they win, right? Because they hold back. So the ability to not be full bore all the time, you're burning yourself out, and that's the problem. Imagine the ability to take breaks to refine your thoughts and operate from a place where you're much more focused and present. And that's what you do when you do this work. So the first question was, we become it's hard to relax because we've adapted to that. As a matter of fact, the second we start to relax, our brain looks for something else because we're addicted to cortisol.
Yeah.
We literally have a physiological addiction to the hormone cortisol, and when it starts to lower, we don't feel normal. That's what addiction is. So the problem is we keep ourselves at this high level because we're afraid we'll lose our edge, but we're killing ourselves in the process. If you
Hmm.
could take those times like the athletes, right, who know how to turn it on and know how to turn it off, then you could be an elite athlete, right? But the kid that tries to run the marathon and takes off 100 miles an hour, he's not even going to make it 50 yards, right? So
Yeah.
it's a matter of being smarter, not working harder, and having the wisdom to realize you're killing yourself, that you're burnt out, you're not in your best state, you're not where you were before. And you know what? That can be changed, but not by doing what you can't change the problem from the same level that got you there. There has to be a change.
Exactly. Exactly. Good. That's a good one. You can't change the problem with the level that got you there. I hope I said it right,
You
right?
need a different perspective, right?
Yes.
I used to train when I used to have the English, this person was CEO of this big company, super successful. And he gave me this advice. He says, when I'm in a meeting and I feel like I'm not quite sure if I'm in the state I want to be, I pause and I go to the bathroom. I go, excuse me, I know this is the worst time to do this, but nature calls. He
Yes.
steps out of the meeting. The board stays there, right? He comes back different and
Yeah.
closes the deal,
Yeah.
right? He does it all the time. And they didn't even know it. He goes, I'm taking a step out into the balcony, gather myself. What do I want to have happen here? Visualize it, walked in, closed the deal. But he does the breath work. He is able to calm himself down out of fight and flight into the state where he wants to be. Just like the Pacers in the last 3 minutes, then he
Yes.
goes in for the kill, right? Because he's at his most. And guess what? The rest of that meeting stayed in there in the same state. He
Hmm.
was losing the meeting. He was going to lose the deal. So he recognized that, took a pause, and he was able to, and it's being present and understanding how to do it and when to do it to get that level of, know-how and how to succeed at it.
Yeah. So I like how you said that because I was going to ask you, because we're such in high gear a lot of times and we're high achievers, so we're just going, what are some of the techniques to help us overcome that type of anxiety and overwhelm? But you touched on it in terms of pausing and taking a walk and come back in. And it brings me to the point as well that there is power in the pause. There's power in the pause that a lot of us overlook. What are your thoughts on that, and what are other things that we can do to pause or to overcome overwhelm?
The breath, taking a breath, taking a break, and realizing that you have options is very important. When you're in a situation that's stressful or there's anxiety, there are hormones happening, your blood pressure is increasing, your focus becomes narrow. And by the way, that's a fight or flight is a mechanism for survival. Okay. We're all organisms, right? We're all organisms. We're all animals, by the way. Whether you realize it or not. I think half the problem is we don't realize it. We think that we're something else, but we have to eat food, we have to drink fresh water, the things we put in our body should be natural. Like we think that we're beyond that and we're drinking Coca-Cola and whatever and sugar. But the reality is we need to be able to self-regulate that way. So I guess I just lost my train of thought. What was the question? Because I just got excited about it.
Right, because I was asking you about the fact that there is power in the pause, and that you would have touched on tips to overcome overwhelm, some of the breath work, the stepping out, the breathing, etc. So those are some of the things I was asking you to add your points on, right?
It's the moment, if you work with people who have committed crimes, if you go to, and even people on death row, if you ask them if there's a moment just before they did what they were going to do, they'll say, yeah, there was. There's a
Y-
split second moment.
Yeah.
And it's the power is in that split second moment to realize there's a moment, to understand there's a moment. And we
Yes.
all have that moment and we're not on automatic. It's not autopilot. And that we can
Right.
take this moment, breathe, collect. And the thing is this. Now, what I do is I teach people, it's a 10-week program. I teach them how to put them into practice to rewire their brain, 5 techniques. We use technology, right? But the power in the pause, it's what you do in that pause
Hmm.
and the practice of it and realizing there's a pause and realizing there's moments in our life and that we're not on autopilot and that we can get control of our autonomic nervous system. And if we just know that, right, then that's where it begins. We're not always gonna be perfect at it.
Yeah.
There's many times where I pause and I'm like, then later on I'll appreciate I had the pause. I didn't do the right thing, but
Yes.
you know what I said next time, you know what I mean? But just being aware of that. So there's an awareness that has to happen that we have control. We live in a world that's so wound up, so high stress, right? And there's so much out there that can be, and if we're not wind up and we're not stressed out enough, we can always reach in our back pocket and have access to every
Yeah.
single pretty much human being on the planet. And we can argue with them, or we can watch the news, or we can find out what's going on. And we tend to go through those stressful things, right? As we go to that area of survival because it's like that's where our brain goes because we want to live, right? So we talked about survival, and stress is all about survival because that's what an organism wants to do. It's the easiest thing to do is just try to survive. The harder thing is to try to overcome those emotions and bring them up those higher levels, to breathe through your chest and kind of focus on your heart and focus on things that are happy and that are love because it's easier to fall down to the lower elements of ourself, right? We live in anger. It's easy. Marketing is about, quick do this or survival or maybe it's sexual, right? Those lower forms of energy or maybe even just will, right? But when you get to those higher levels of our being, where it's our heart, it's our voice, it's
Yeah.
our spirit, like we just want to work on getting ourselves up there. And I'll tell you why. When I say rewire the brain, it's just about being the fact that what you're doing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So take it this way. Whatever you're putting into your brain every single day, whatever you're thinking, you are already rewiring your brain, but you're just doing it based on whatever you're putting in your brain. So what if we use that and intentionally rewired it, or we're neuroplastic, we spend time in the most happy, loving state we can possibly conjure, right? For a period of time, which by the way, when you're in that state, it's really awesome. It's like, why would you not do that in 10 minutes in the morning before you started your day,
Right.
and then be 10 minutes before you went to bed at night, and we start to see those people's lives change, not just from those 10 minutes, but when that stuff comes up during the day that might normally would have freaked you out before, because you're rewiring your brain, even that little bit of time in the morning and at night, man, it changes everything. I've been doing this for 9 years. I have all of my data. My life has changed. I had a psychiatrist diagnosed me with angry brain.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm one of those like, and I played sports, and I was a sports, and those fractures that I got because I was tackling people, like I was like a crazy dude, like And I started my practice that way, and it was like, I want $1 million practice, and I'm the greatest, And I wrote a book, and I traveled, and it was like and then I burnt out. I physically broke down, and I
Uh,
had to change. And you know what? I'm so happy that that happened because now my mission is literally trying to just
great.
get this
Great.
message to people. Like you're killing yourself if you're driving yourself like that. And if you're over 35 and you're still trying to kill yourself like that, don't. I understand the first half of the career, but then learn your lesson. Okay. If you're still 40 and 50 years old, you have high blood pressure, you have chronic pain, you can't sleep, you're having issues with, marital issues, and your business is not as much fun anymore. And you're like, what am I doing? I get that. Okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of that comes from that hypervigilance and the drives.
Right.
And it's time to start rethinking how we're doing it. Um, a smarter way, I think you'll make more money. I think you'll enjoy it much more. I think maybe if it's time for a second career, it'll be based on something you want to do that brings you pleasure, as opposed to just, why we take jobs and why we work for always like, is it the dollar? Is it whatever? So I just think we make better decisions is when we come from a
Yes,
place
absolutely.
of coherence. And I think that's the business angle the most, but it's kind of, I use it as the Jedi mind trick because if I can train people to spend 10 minutes in the most loving feeling they possibly can be, and I can do that with multiple people, I might
Great.
change the world a little bit. Right? What if that was our focus?
Yeah.
Like, but I haven't watched the news. I can't even tell you. You know what? I'm happy about that. You know what? Because I'd rather work with people who are watching the news and
Hmm.
they think it's the most important thing that they're stressed about, and then watch them realize that, man, it's not.
Yeah.
It's my family, it's my business, it's my experience in life as a human being could be so much better if I just started to do things a little bit differently instead of the way I've been doing them for the last 10, 20, 30
That's
years.
that's so that's true. Good
And it's not
point.
hard. It's really not. It's really not. It's just different. It's just different, a
Right.
different perspective.
Yes. So rewiring the brain and the breath work, it actually takes practice, right? And I think there's a level of mindfulness that you have to um adhere to. And when you spoke earlier, what I got out of it is that even when we backtrack to the power of the pause, you mentioned that a lot of times when we pause, we don't remember that we have options, right? So, in addition to that, to pausing and also you sharing the tip that you can do in the morning, I realize that how mental clarity is so important to help us to overcome the overwhelm that we experience from time to time.
Yes.
So yeah, so I think in terms of how you share that, that brought me to that point about mental clarity and how really we don't focus on mental clarity, which helps to reduce the burden in our brain that causes, the frustration and the overwhelm, etc. Yeah,
Absolutely. We teach 5 techniques in my 10-week course. One of them is called freeze frame. And it's a emotional regulation technique because sometimes you're in a situation where you have to pause. And that's exactly what it is, but it trains you to pause,
yeah,
put yourself into a state and then rethink it from a state of coherence. When you do it, it's just you always come with a different option, like that you wouldn't have thought of at the beginning, which
yeah,
is really cool because you know what? Imagine always taking the better option. Imagine having the power to do that. And then what
yes.
we do is the last technique we teach out of the 5 is it's called a attitudinal. It's basically taking that pause. We take what you're having a bad attitude about. Maybe it's whatever it is. It's a situation, a upcoming situation, or it's your business, or an employee, or a spouse, whatever. And we recognize the feeling, right? And then we bring them through a process of coherence, and then we shift it when we bring that thought into the feeling that they want to have. And it's interesting how you can kind of reprogram. That's the 5th technique that we teach. It's great for
Okay,
business because it allows you to change your attitudes that you have towards
yeah,
things. Maybe it's addictions or maybe it's food or whatever it's going to be. And now when that comes up, you're no longer triggering the old response. It's kind of like hypnotizing yourself if you think about it. That's what being hypnotized really is putting yourself into this relaxing state that's suggestive and then bringing in the new thought that you want to program into your brain. So that's our last technique that we teach. It's kind of fun, to do that with some specific things that people are dealing with.
okay. Interesting. I think it's an interesting one to try. It's an interesting
Yes.
one. Yeah. So, Dr. Moore, talk to me. Tell me a little bit about if I had to ask you, what would one thing that you would leave with my audience, one last tip, one last sharing, or something of value, what would you
Very
share
easy.
with us?
I have one mission right now, right? My
Yeah.
mission is that people understand that your feelings and emotions are driving your physiology, aka your biology, aka your health, right? So
Mhm.
if your feelings and emotions are driving your health, what feelings and emotions are you consistently having on a daily basis? Because that's what's driving your health outcomes. And if that bothers you or scares you, don't let it. Because it's the same system that got you here that we could use to reverse engineer it back out, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a place where you're depressed, angry, that just means the system works and you've been working it and you actually programmed yourself neuroplastically that way. So what if we could be conscious of that and start to little by little be aware of it and start to reprogram down the other way. So that's my mission, that people have that choice, that they understand that first that that's happening because a lot of people don't know that. They're just wondering why they're in such a bad state. So I feel like if I can get as many people to know that, if they want to change it, they will. If they don't want to change it,
Yes.
they won't. But at least they have a fair option,
Yes,
and I
they
can
do.
understand the physiology. So I created a free course and community, and that's what that course does, and that's what the community is about. It's all about it takes an hour to go through the course, right? The first is about the biology of what's going on with your physiology and your thoughts. The second is that there's about resilience and what you can do about it. And the third is the breathing technique. And that breathing technique, I literally show you my breathing technique on how to breathe and how to relax and where the air goes and literally how to get yourself into a nice, relaxing state. Okay. I don't get too much into what I train people in my course. If they want to go, that's fine. But it's really enough for people to understand that one thing that I want them to know and then
Yeah.
try a little bit to see if it works.
Great, great. Thank you for that. I'm sure many persons would be interested because Even myself, you talk about your mission about understanding that your feelings and emotions drive what's going on in your body. It is so true. Even today, I was conscious of the fact that I was fine in the morning, and then I got two messages and one phone call, and it threw me off, right? Threw me off totally, but I knew something was happening, and I really paused. It is something that I tried to do. I paused and I was like, okay, what happened in the last 45 minutes to an hour? And that helped me to dissect some of the things because I really felt extremely anxious, like time was against me and I have to stop and do this now. A lot of things was happening. So thanks for sharing that.
You know what? I want to say before we go, I want to say one thing I think that's
Yeah.
interesting. I thought it's interesting is that there's parts of our health that's automatic, right? Our blood pressure, our heart rate, our hormonal, our digestive system. Those things you don't have to do anything or think about. It's automatic or it's voluntary. It's
Hmm.
involuntary, right? Breath is also involuntary. We've been breathing your whole life. We were breathing when we were a fetus. We were breathing amniotic fluid, and then we came out and they got spanked, and then we breathe air, and that's how it works. But breath is also voluntary, right? So that's why it's our access point. If you can stop your breath, take a deep breath, hold your breath, breathe faster or slower, it increases the heart rate, it increases all kinds of things in the body. That's why breath, as simple as it may sound,
Yeah.
is the access point. So when you combine the breath with the thought and the heart rate starts to sync up, and the heart
Hmm.
rate is the orchestra, it's orchestra or the director of the orchestra starts to sync up the rest of the parts of your body. That's called coherence, right? One or more things start to entrain in synchronization. So your breath, your heart rate, your hormones all start to sync up in this state called coherence. And that's as crazy as it's simple as breath may sound. I'm just breathing. That's the access point, and that's how incredibly amazing our body is and our physiology,
Yeah.
and simple. So it's not as hard as crazy as it might sound, as simple as it might sound. I'm always afraid that I was simplifying too much, that people wouldn't try it. But I really beg people to consider
Great.
this as an act, as a way to just calm themselves down. World's crazy. We need a little bit of love in our life, and love each other. It's okay, and it's okay to lead with love. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, I recommend it.
Hmm.
I really do. It's wonderful. Like it's amazing. Like it's just like and guess what? Most people are naturally there. If you lead with love, they just come back. If you lead with anger, they come. It's just lead with it and
Yeah.
watch how something like that can make a big difference in your day, in your energy that's around you. And how if you're a leader in business or in work or in sales, like lead with love and lead with, I don't know. I've always everything I do always as a person, it's always I'm a servant, so I'm always serving somebody. So it's not hard for me to do that. But most businesses are you're serving something, you're fixing a problem, you're helping somebody, or so it's just lead with that place of love and watch the difference because the way we got here was driving, and maybe it wasn't so much about those people. Maybe it was just like getting successful for us, and it's natural to be that way when we're in survival mode. But once
Yeah.
you get to the place of success, it's no longer survival mode. It's thrival. It's about collaboration, right? It's about you and I just chatting about helping people, right? It's
Yeah.
like fun, right? It's what we do and it's what we do. It's because it's natural, and it's where our success now comes from as opposed to when we were kind of more in that survival mode. And I think that's important.
Great, great. What a powerful conversation that we've had here. And I believe that everything that you have shared can resonate with the audience. There are some simple things, but they're so effective because we're always going, going, going. We don't find the time to pause. We don't find the time to breathe, the breath work, the access points that you talk about. I really think the conversation today was rich. It was a learning moment, right? I'm just clinging on. So thank you so much, Dr. Moore. Where can we find you? And where can we find? I know you're also the author of the Chiropractor Evolution. We didn't talk about that, but you can tell us where to find your book and you can tell us where to find you.
Okay, well, I wrote a book a long time ago. Thanks for reminding me. I forgot. And I toured. It was called The Chiropractic Evolution. It's on Amazon. It's really what I believed, what I needed to know that chiropractic worked. I came into chiropractic as sports injuries. I got into more of a medical model, but then I learned so much more about neurological efficiency and what chiropractic really was that that's what that book is about. So the best way to get that's on Amazon. So
Right, great.
it's a very cheap book. You get it on Kindle. The second thing is I'm on Facebook. So it's David Moore DC. That's my name on Facebook. So if you can find me, I'll put the link. I guess we'll put the link here below.
Yes, we
That's
will.
where I put all my content out, and you can find, Instagram and all that. But that's really where I put the core content out and to communicate with people. And then I would love for people to take the free course and be
The
part of
course,
this.
right? We'll put the information in the show notes as
Yeah,
well.
that's awesome, and then in that course you can reach out to me. If you want to get on a call and if I help you do things, it's what I love to do. I put the content out to meet people, so don't just watch the stuff. Reach out, DM me. I'll talk to you, and we'll start talking about how we can change your life or rewire your brain, or if there's someone that you know that's struggling, just struggling. We don't have to get into anything more than just if you're struggling. Let's find out what's going on with you. I would love to tell you what I do. And if there's a way that we can help each other and I can help you, then it would be my pleasure.
Great, great, wonderful. Thank you so much again. It was my absolute pleasure speaking with you, Dr. Moore. And for my audience, I know you benefited well, and all the information that he shared will be in the show notes. So good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are listening from. And remember, until next episode, stay focused and stay fulfilled.
Thank you so much.